Hello, welcome. My name is Nicole, and I am a program manager at the nonprofit Solar Oregon. Thank you for joining us tonight for this event. We're going to be going over some topics related to solar and how you can compare different quotes you may get for solar and storage. After the presentation, we'll also have a Q&A session, and we'll jump right into it. So thank you all for joining us today. So first, we'll look at system fundamentals, take a quick look at a diagram of the components in a typical solar system. We do go into this in more detail in our How to Go Solar and Storage workshop. So if you haven't attended one of those, you can find recordings of those online. And that's really going to be more your Solar 101. We will touch on a couple of the topics here today, but are going to be focusing more on elements that you'll see in a quote when you get that from a contractor, as well as example quotes. And so you can see what those pieces of information will look like when you get a quote. We'll also talk about how you can connect with a contractor if you haven't already. If you have already done the How to Go Solar and Storage workshop, you probably have already connected with a contractor, but we'll just reshare that information here and maybe some things you might want to take into account as you search for a contractor. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. We'll use the chat as a place to put helpful resources, so I will go ahead and drop some of those resource links there now that I'll be referencing through the presentation. And then, like I mentioned, if for any questions, just feel free to put those in the Q&A box so we don't miss them in the chat. We're also just going to run a couple polls so we can learn more about where you're joining from today and who you are. So I'll launch that now. While those polls are going, I also wanted to share some great upcoming events that we have. We have our annual Go Zero Energy Homes Tour coming up on October 4th. That event highlights homes in Oregon that have installed energy efficiency features. They have solar, and they're either zero energy homes or on a path to zero energy, meaning that they offset the energy they use with renewable energy, such as solar. A little bit more about Solar Oregon. We are a nonprofit that's been around since 1979, providing education around solar. And we do this in workshops like this one, as well as outreach events, curriculum development, as well as some policy advocacy. We have our flagship events, which are that Go Zero tour that happens every year, and also our solar wine tour. And then we have an annual meeting event in December. So we hope you can join us in person at some of those and connect with other individuals who have solar or are passionate about solar, and just keep building community and resources around solar. So we hope we see you at some of those in the future. Also, this workshop series is supported by Energy Trust of Oregon. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit that was established in 2002, and it provides resources to help enable customers of the investor-owned utilities in our state to gain access to use energy efficiently and also get access to renewable energy. Energy Trust offers key incentives for solar and storage, and they offer it for homeowners, and they also have some incentives for energy efficiency. We just cover the solar and storage ones here today, but you can check out their website to learn more about their other incentives. They also have some incentives for businesses as well. So if you haven't found a contractor yet, Energy Trust has a program where they help vet local contractors, and these contractors are approved to offer Energy Trust incentives. So if you do want to access those incentives, if you're a PGE or Pacific Power customer, you do have to work with a trade ally contractor. And these contractors are also familiar with Energy Trust design and installation requirements. So Energy Trust has a solar bid tool right on their website. You can scan this QR code or pull one of those links from the chat um, to go to their website or the solar bid tool if you haven't gotten quotes yet. We always recommend getting at least 3 quotes so that you can compare um, the different system options. Solar is highly customizable, so working with different contractors, you might have different things that you'll see come up in a quote. And we're going to jump right into system fundamentals. So this is a typical grid-tied solar system in this diagram here that shows the system components. So you have your solar panels that could not collect that sunlight to create electricity. These panels can be ground mounted or mounted on your roof. And sometimes you'll see these solar panels called PV panels or photovoltaic panels. And basically, once they collect that sunlight, they create a voltage of electricity called direct current or DC. And then a special component called an inverter or an inverter or microinverter will go ahead and convert that DC electricity to AC electricity, which is used by the outlets and appliances in your home. And when you have a grid tied system, such as illustrated in this diagram, you also get a special utility meter installed called a bidirectional meter, and that's going to measure any extra production that you don't use that you send back out to the grid. And it'll also measure if you draw any electricity from the grid as well. So you'll see that on your bill, your generation that you send out, and also any electricity you draw from the grid. And here in our state, we have an agreement called a net metering that helps you account for the electricity that you send out to the grid. It basically allows you to gain credits for this excess generation that you send out to the grid, and you get net metering credits that are earned. They show up on your bill in a year-to-date bank, and in that bank, you can actually use that to offset in times when you need to draw electricity from the grid. So if you are in the winter producing less with your solar and you need to draw from the grid, what that'll do is if you have any credits built up in that bank, it'll use that first before charging you for billable kilowatt hours. And then it's important to know that the net metering year starts in April and runs through March. So because it starts in April, you're able to really build up those credits in the sunnier months to be able to access those in the winter. The credits will roll over in your year-to-date bank from month to month, but they do not roll over year to year. So it's really important to right size your solar system so you're producing enough for your needs, but don't end up with too much excess that you can't utilize in your bank that at the end of March would get donated to low-income customers. And if you need to or would like to learn more about net metering, we do go about that into that in more detail and show what an example PGE bill looks like in our How to Go Solar and Storage workshop. Solar is highly modular and customizable, as I mentioned. The system size is really going to be based on your consumption. So when you do meet with a contractor to get a quote, they'll probably ask you questions about your energy consumption and what goals you have with your system. In Oregon, the average solar system is about 8 kilowatts. You'll see that abbreviated on your quote is KW. And then if you do look into battery storage and pairing that with your solar, the average size battery is about 13.5 kilowatt hours, and that would be abbreviated when you're looking at your quotes as kWh, and that's really talking to the capacity of the battery. How much space you have available can also impact the size of your system, as well as if you do roof mount or ground mount. Your installer will look at your solar resource, so how much sunlight you get, where they're thinking about installing that solar. So if you're looking at roof mounted solar, they'll see how much shading you get on your roof, so they can use that to help design the system. Because solar is highly customizable, the cost can vary depending on the system size, design, uh, If you need to re-roof, panels last between 20 and 25 years. So if you don't have a lot of roof life left, you'd have to pay to uninstall your panels, then pay to install your roof, and then reinstall those solar panels. So it's helpful to match the life of your roof with the life of the panels. And most installers recommend having at least 10 plus years of roof life left before you install solar on your roof. If you decide to install storage, and when you install it can impact your cost as well. If you install it after you've installed your solar, you might need to reconfigure your system to incorporate that battery. Also, if you have an older home, you might need to um, do some electrical upgrades or upgrade your panel before you can have solar installed on your roof. And then access to incentives, so that ability to get incentives from Energy Trust of Oregon if you're a PGE or Pacific Power customer, which your trade ally contractor will apply for upon your behalf, and that would impact your out-of-pocket costs. And also, if you're planning to or able to access that federal tax credit that's ending at the end of this year, would impact that cost. If you have a grid tie system, you're also going to be interconnecting to the grid. So there is an application process for that and a fee. And that can really make differences in what you're quoted for your price. So differences in system production is something that you'll look at once you get a couple example quotes. You can see on that quote what the size of the system is, what modules they might be using. As we said, you usually see the system measured in kW or kilowatts. So if you have an 8 kilowatt system, that means that's 8,000 watts. So if you're trying to calculate your cost per watt when you're looking at these different quotes, because they might not have all the same system designs, but if you want to look at a comparison number for cost, that's one thing that you can compare, is taking that number of watts and taking the cost of the system and dividing it by that number of watts. So let's say your quote is for $32,000 to add an 8 kilowatt solar system. You would take that $32,000 and divide it by the watt capacity, which is 8,000 watts for an 8 kilowatt system. And that would be about $4 per watt. And so that's something you can look at as you're comparing those quotes, but you also want to keep in mind that the different quotes might have different items quoted on there as well, such as different adders, which we'll get into later. The production estimate might also be featured on your quote. So looking at how much electricity is estimated to be produced by your system can be a helpful factor to compare. The elements in the quote, which we started kind of talking about with looking at the size of the system, we're going to dig a little deeper into that now. So looking at not only the size, but what equipment is included in that quote. How many panels is it? What are the capacity of those panels? Are they newer panels? You can also usually see which module panel they are, so what company they're coming from, and be comparing that from quote to quote. Also adders, if there's any add-ons, in addition to the typical components in the system, seeing if that is on there, and also looking at warranties that are included and any maintenance that is mentioned as being included. So you want to know what you're paying for and how much. Technology can vary from system to system, so you can look at what brands are included. Is there newer technology? So we mentioned electrical upgrades. If you're doing solar plus storage, you might need to add an additional panel called an essential loads panel. And that basically is that second breaker box that will be connected to certain circuits that are connected to the battery. And then some people might choose to do a smart option. Instead of doing that essential loads panel, you could look at smart options for electrical panels that give you some load flexibility. So, what is in that quote? Is it newer technology that might be making the pricing different? And taking a look at that is very helpful. Both inverters and microinverters do work in our state. Some installers might specialize in utilizing specific brands or those string inverters over the microinverters. So you might see that vary across different quotes. We did talk about adders. So is there a battery quoted in your quote from the installer? Is it one or two batteries? What's that capacity of the batteries? So we mentioned that batteries capacity will be in kWh or kilowatt hours. So you can compare that. If you have asked for an EV charger, is that included on the quote and part of that quote? And if you need re-roofing or extra structural supports added to your roof before you can install solar, these are things that you'll want to check as you're looking over the quotes. Also, are there other add-ons like critter guards to keep the squirrels away from the underside of the panel? That could be sometimes used in our area. So I'm really comparing that so you can see what's included, is it included across all quotes, and what's the pricing for those items. For warranties, there's usually two warranties that you'll see when you're getting solar and storage. And so usually there's um, warranties that are for the specific equipment. So like manufacturer warranties. So you want to know what those are for. Warranties for panels are usually about 20 to 25 years, and inverters are around 10 to 15 years. And this can depend on the system size and the brands that are used in your quote. And there's usually also workmanship warranties that you'll come across. Usually there's at least a 2-year workmanship warranty, Energy Trust, Solar Within Reach program, which is their income qualified program, does require a higher number of years for their workmanship warranty. So that's also something to consider. And then these are some common elements you'll see. So we talked about the equipment used. So here in this, you can see like what inverter is being used, what panels, what models they are. Is there any monitoring for your system that's included so that you can see either on an app on your phone or by logging into a dashboard if your panels are producing and how well they're producing. So that's some of the things you might see. And then if you have those adders, you should see those come up on your quote as well. Because solar and battery storage entail a large upfront cost, many homeowners will utilize financing, and some installers offer financing options. But it's always good to check with your bank or credit union that you already have a relationship with to see if they offer any loans tailored to solar. There are also leases. Some larger companies might offer power purchase agreements. When you're looking at getting a loan, it's really important to read the financial terms. You know, what are the terms of that loan? And what are the fees? If you're doing a lease, is there an annual escalator? Um, and does it impact your ownership of the home? And if you're doing PPAs, which is leasing out the production of the system instead of the equipment, just making sure that you understand those contracts before you sign is very important. With as with any major financial decision, um, please take your time to review the documents. Make sure you're asking questions if you don't understand something in your quote. Um, And then also looking at what the monthly payment is if you are financing your system. What does that break down to be? And understanding how that works so you're not surprised when that first bill comes in. Other things to think about with loans is really similar as when you think about loans for a house or car. What's the interest rate? Are there refinancing options? Who services the loan? Also, sometimes there are dealer fees or other additional fees. So you want to make sure that you see if that is included in your loan structure and ask questions about it. If you are interested in accessing the federal investment tax credit, it's great to connect with your tax professional. We are not tax professionals here at Solar Oregon, but this information is important to share since it is still available. It is ending at the end of this year, though. So that federal solar investment tax credit, or ITC, um, end date has been moved up to the end of this year. And how it's structured right now is that you get 30% of your cost dollar for dollar as a tax credit. And your system would have to be installed by December 31st of 2025. This year is coming to a close very quickly. So if you have not gotten quotes yet, it's very important to move and get the quotes so you can compare those. Also ask your installers about timelines. And then if you have questions on how to do this for your tax filing, since you would be the one making sure that you file to get this credit, or doing that through your tax professional. Also checking with them if you have questions on how to get that done. Your installer will usually help with the permitting and paperwork for the installation as well as interconnection, but they do not help you with this federal tax credit. But you do want to ask them about their timeline, since now we have a deadline at the end of this year to be able to qualify for that. We also have in our state Energy Trust standard incentives for solar and storage if you're a PGE or Pacific Power customer. These incentives can change, just like as we've seen with the tax credit. Incentives and credits change based on funding, availability, policy. So if you see something that looks like it might work for you and help you access solar, it's good to get that quote or compare that quote to see if it makes sense and is the right financial decision, because they do change frequently. So that's just something to keep in mind. Energy Trust also has an additional income qualified incentive called Solar Within Reach. And there are links in those resources if you want to see if you qualify for the gross income limit. And you can check that out at the Energy Trust website. Also, when working with an Energy Trust Trade Ally contractor, they will help work through those Energy Trust incentives with you. All right, so just some example quotes of how things might appear. Their quotes can vary depending on what contractor is sending it over. So you might see things displayed in different ways. Sometimes infographics are used, sometimes more of a spreadsheet list format is used. So this is just going back to how big your system is and how that might look. When you're looking at different quotes. So you can see on the left side, this is more of just kind of listing out the specs, and they even tell you what the dollar per watt is. And then remember, system size uh, is measured in kW for solar. And then if you're adding a battery, you would see that battery capacity as kilowatt hours. And so just know that they might show up in different places and different formats, but you can usually see it in the specs or the system size section. For cost breakdown in your quote, you'll want to look at if they're incorporating the tax credit in your costs. And you can see on the left, this quote is taking into consideration that um, the homeowner is able to access that Energy Trust Solar Within Reach incentive, and then it's showing their out of pocket and then showing that tax credit as separate line items because that tax credit does not impact your out of pocket cost that you would get later as you apply for your taxes. So you do have to have tax liability if you are thinking about using that tax credit, since it would less the taxes you owe by 30% of the cost of your system. And then just looking at, you know, maybe they're projecting your electricity production annually or your annual savings. Understanding how they're calculating that is going to be very helpful. Payback period comes up a lot from homeowners as a question. And that really is going to depend on your consumption, your energy consumption, what the design of your system is, the size of it, what that out-of-pocket cost is will factor into your payback. And then also some calculations might also include that cost of energy going up at a certain rate every year. As we've seen here in our state, it's been going up pretty steadily because that would also impact your payback. Looking at the different materials that might be in your quote under the specs section, if you want to know about what brand of panels or more specific model information, that usually will be listed out. And then also sometimes there'll be a section if you're getting financing through your installer about financing. So just really taking time to understand that section, make sure that you're understanding what that monthly loan payment is going to be, so that it makes sense and you're not surprised when you get your monthly loan payment and then also your energy bill. So finding a contractor, if you haven't already, we're just gonna touch on this very quickly. Company culture, size, structure, years in business are some things to look at that might be important to how you select a contractor. So you can look at that as you're looking at different contractors. Uh, Check out reviews. Sometimes there's online reviews. You can also ask the installer for references. Sometimes they'll have testimonials posted on their website. For credentialing, are they part of the Trade Ally network, which only those installers are able to access the Energy Trust incentives that help your out-of-pocket cost? What other credentials might they have? For some people, belief and values-based credentials are important as they select a contractor. So are they a B Corp? Things like that are other things you can use as you're trying to decide which contractor is right for you. And then this is just a reminder about the Trade Ally network. And that link to the solar bid tool connects you with trade allies. So if you have not gotten a quote yet, now is a good time to. And you can do that through that link at the Energy Trust website. All right. We are moving into the Q&A section here, so please put any questions you may have in the chat. I'm going to put those helpful links, in the Q&A box. I'm going to put the links in the chat, just in case you need those again. This recording will be posted online and shared out with folks who registered today. And we hope to see you at our future events. Thank you so much.